So, I've been playing with the Winter Grave recently, and I've come to realize that holy hell, it's fucking OP. Like, this thing is crazy good in a number of situations. I'd even go as far as to say this thing gives some elemental weapons a run for their money. Like, when comparing the Winter Grave to the Divine Avenger when it comes to dealing damage against slimes, the damage is comparable. And because the Winter Grave deals shadow damage, it's useful for most types of enemies, and it covers most of the common enemy families you'll come across. Barring the undead and fiends, which is something you're not going to plan on using anyways, because why would you use shadow against shadow? And because of the Winter Grave's type coverage, it's allowed to deal with more annoying enemies that you'll sometimes come across. Gremlins, for example, specifically thwackers and menders. Thwackers, they have the shields, it completely pierces through that. Menders, they zigzag everywhere. A good shot will instantly kill them, preventing them from zigzagging all over the place. So if they pop a bubble, the charge attack will generally take out most of the shield, if not all of it. It's great against lumbers. Most of the time it'll keep them stuck in place, if not killing them. Hell, I've even seen this thing work great against Mechanites if you aim your shots correctly. And of course, this thing is great against large crowds of enemies. Unlike most guns where you just shoot it for days, the Winter Grave should be used as charge spam. And you'll want to charge attack mainly when enemies are in lines or clustered close together. This allows the Winter Grave to become a fucking dopamine machine. The feeling of one-shotting most enemies is goddamn amazing, and it's not really something you could replicate with other guns or weapons. It's just absolutely amazing seeing all the fucking numbers and the massacre of enemies dying together. The sounds of explosions, the numbers, the animations of everything dying, it's just amazing. It's an absolute dopamine machine. There are other strategies you can use the Winter Grave with, aside from just spamming the charge attack. You can abuse the flinch mechanic, where you can literally just attack an enemy and they'll flinch every time because the Winter Grave literally does enough damage to proc flinch. And it's basically like in Dark Souls, where it's like the poise mechanic, if you do enough damage to a certain type of enemy, you'll just fucking stun lock them in place until they end up dying. I've had an instance where using the Winter Grave's pushback actually saved me from taking damage, actually. It's not going to happen often, but if you can time it right, it might be useful in the right situations. Of course, you can always go for the classic two-sword swing and a one-gun shot. That's always reliable for enemies who are low HP and don't really warrant a charge attack. This also works best when it comes to hybrid knights like myself. Or, of course, you can just use the gun switch tactic, which also does work, but I think the two-sword into one-gun shot works better. And actually, using the freeze simply to stall enemies is a really good strat, as it allows you to deal with other enemies more effectively. In this instance, I freeze the giant column of lichen, which allows me to focus on the 4 wolvers completely uninterrupted. This is great against larger or more dangerous enemies, especially for those who may not be acclimated to dealing with these types of situations just yet. In a similar fashion, you can use freeze to prevent turrets from targeting you, which is really nice because the charge time for the Winter Grave is relatively slow without charge time reduction. And so long as you can stay out of the line of sight, you can focus on other enemies while the turret's just stuck there. Granted, it doesn't work with polyps, but so long as you're fighting gun puppies and howitzers, you'll have a nice little bit of free time. Another instance of freeze being useful, although rather unintentionally, and sadly I didn't get footage for it, was when I ended up freezing an enemy that blocked the path of other enemies being able to get to me, and so it gave me a nice little bit of a breather. Granted, it's not something I would wage on, but, it was nice that it happened, so. Overall, although I'm late to the party when it comes to saying this, the Winter Grave is both a lot of fun and is quite OP. It's quite a shame I didn't realize how great this weapon was sooner. I'll definitely be using this weapon a lot more often, and I think it's something you should try using if you haven't already.